On this episode of Locked On Canadiens, if I ever have to watch a Minnesota Wild game ever again, it will be too soon.
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to episode 1184 of Locked On Canadiens. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day and for subscribing wherever you get your podcast, including here on YouTube. Doing so supports the show and makes sure you don't miss an episode. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. My name is Ian Boisvert, also known as Maybe It's Ian. I'm not joined by Laura Saba today. This is the conclusion of Maybe It's Ian week. Laura will be back with us at some point in the following week. And it's a good thing she missed this one because this was a stinker of a hockey game. It started out pretty good for the Canadiens, but ultimately the curse of the Minnesota Wild struck once again. We'll get into all of that. We will talk about the upcoming game against Columbus on Saturday night, keys to that game, what I'm going to be watching for. And then we jump into the mailbag where I think we're ready to trade some defensemen away, unfortunately. But let's start with the game in Minnesota. Montreal drops that one by a score of 3-0. And I think that the big story for me coming out of that game is I don't think they were bad. In fact, quite the opposite. I thought the Canadiens through the first half of the game were a team that absolutely understood the assignment in front of them. That they were coached up properly for that game. They definitely had enough lead time heading into it. They knew what they wanted to accomplish on Thursday night in Minnesota. Did they accomplish it? No, because they ended up falling to the Minnesota Wild. I want to talk about the way they play hockey in just a minute, but I'll stick with the Canadiens for now. I think Marty St. Louis should be very happy with the effort that he saw from his team on Thursday night. And I don't say that as like a moral victory sort of thing. I say that as somebody who has spent the last couple weeks on this show defending the coach and saying that, the process is right. This was a good process game. You watch the first period and most of the second period, and you see a Canadiens team that is just, they're on every puck. They want to be all over the Wild. They gave Kirill Kaprizov no room to operate in the first half of that game. Matheson threw him to the ice. Hudson got turned around by him, but Savard held him off long enough for Hudson to get back in the play and take the puck back. They played really well to start that game. I liked their play in the neutral zone a lot. They were killing a lot of rushes before they got started, which is not something we see a lot of from this team. Instead, they're kind of reliant on their defensive system to move the puck out of their zone by letting the other team come in just to try to get the puck back. This time I noticed in the early going, the forwards were applying a lot of pressure at the opposing blue line and at the red line. And I think that paid dividends early. The Wild seemed like they were frustrated. They couldn't really get much going. Montreal only had 2 shots in the first period, which tied a season low because that's happened a few times now. They've never won any of those games. So there's another story for you. If they get 2 shots in a period, the game is over. I'm kidding. That's not how you should look at that. But it's funny, like at the end of a period where they did not score, they only got 2 shots on net. We still felt pretty good about it. It seemed like the Canadiens, like I said, they had a plan coming into this one, and they were ready to execute on it. And speaking of plans, whatever John Hines has cooked up for whatever team he's on, it is an affront to hockey fans everywhere. He coaches some of the most boring hockey teams I have ever seen. I've seen him coach the Devils live. I've been at a bunch of games. We've seen, his teams with the Devils and with the Predators. It's this era's Guy Boucher is what it feels like. Like he probably would have been so stoked for that game to end 1-0. Like that's the kind of game that the Minnesota Wild have been playing this year. And Mike Johnson mentioned it a bunch on the broadcast that, the Montreal Canadiens were doing well to suppress a lot of chances, but the Wild aren't a team that creates a lot. They kind of rely on their defensive structure to carry them through games, and they've gotten great goaltending from both Gustafsson and Fleury. We didn't see Fleury tonight. I imagine we'll see Fleury when the Wild come to Montreal later this year. It'll be his last chance at playing in the Bell Center. He'll probably get a nice ovation. But it just always felt like that game, even though Montreal early on, I think that was like a game that like sickos like, right? If you're a hardcore hockey fan and a Montreal Canadiens fan, that first period was so fun. And anybody else watching that from the outside will say, why did you have fun watching that? It's well, the Canadiens didn't get decimated like we all kind of thought they would. 9 giveaways the entire game. That's the first time, I think maybe this season. It's at least the first time since I've been tracking it that it's been under 10. And it's the first time since I've been tracking it that the other team had more giveaways than the Montreal Canadiens. Minnesota had 10. So a big night for them in protecting the puck. Now, they didn't end up doing much with it. That's step 2, right? But step 1, protect the puck. Hey, they did it. That's sort of what you want to see from these guys moving forward. Because against teams that don't have such a shell defensive structure, if you're protecting the puck, you're going to get opportunities. So the more they do of that, the better. They were also 54% at the dot, which is really, really nice. They don't win a ton of faceoffs. They don't usually outdraw other teams. Although I looked it up afterwards, Minnesota was 22nd in the NHL coming into this, so they're not exactly lighting the world on fire at the dot either. The offense, the top 6 for Montreal, the top 2 lines, they had the best possession numbers among the offensive lines. Again, didn't do much with it, and the margins weren't great. It wasn't like they had 10 shot attempts 4 and 2 against. It was more 7-5 in that range for those guys. 2 high danger chances, 4 at 5-on-5 the entire game. Now, they only gave up 7 to Minnesota, so very low event hockey game, but 2 is just not going to get it done. I'm not even going to say most nights, ever. You're not going to win ever if you're generating 2 high danger chances at 5-on-5. And when the power play lets you down. The Canadiens have a decent power play. They went 0 for 3 in this one, though, and I think a lot of that had to do with a lot of players have been spending a little bit too much time with the puck standing still. You all know the first person I'm going to mention is Mike Matheson. I'm sorry. I thought he had a pretty okay game, honestly. But when he's in those situations with the power play, it's a stark difference between him, scanning and then making a pass and then it coming right back to him and him doing it all over again. There's a difference between that and Lane Hutson, who his motor is incredible and he gets the puck and he wants to do something with it. He's not waiting for something to happen. He is the thing that is happening. So that's the difference between those two players. And I can see why fans would want Hutson on that first power play unit. I understand that. I would try him there at least once or twice. He's gotten limited viewings on that first unit, and in one of them, he ended up setting up a goal. So it's still frustrating that they won't at least alternate those guys on that power play unit, especially with Matheson fighting it. It's a little frustrating to watch. It's got to be frustrating to him for him to go out on the ice and fight it most nights. There were some moments in this one where you could tell he was feeling it when he threw Kaprizov to the ice. That was sweet. Love to see that. And I thought, Montembeault was pretty good to great in this one. The expected goals numbers won't look great, so his saves above expected won't be super great, but there were a bunch of saves in there that, we would have seen go in earlier in the season. And he held his ground. I think that's the kind of game from Montembeault that you need. It was just enough to keep the Canadiens around in that game and give them a shot to win it if they could figure out how to shoot the puck again. My last gripe with this game, I feel like I was watching Thomas Plekanec and Brian Giunta all over again because every shot was directly into the crest of the goaltender. And I mentioned that, I think, in the Leafs game last weekend. Just every shot right into the stomach. I don't know how they solve that other than just practicing shooting, but they practice shooting a ton. It's like what they do the most of, I would imagine. So I think they need to take some extra time thinking and feeling more confident. They looked so confident at the beginning of that game. If they got more opportunities to shoot, I feel like they would have gotten one. But as the game went on, I think that confidence, dwindled, and they just ended up throwing every puck right into Gustafson's chest. So a frustrating result for the Montreal Canadiens, but again, process oriented. I thought that was a step in the right direction. And it sets them up for a game on Saturday against a weak opponent in Columbus, where we will see if they can capitalize on a lot of the things that they are working on. And we'll get into all of that in just a minute. I love a great deal as much as the next guy, but I'm not going to crawl through a bed of hot coals or volunteer for a root canal just to save a few bucks. It has to be easy. No hoops, no BS. So when Mint Mobile said it was easy to get wireless for $15 a month with the purchase of a 3-month plan, I called them on it. Turns out it really is that easy to get wireless for $15 a month. The longest part of the process was the time I spent on hold waiting to break up with my old provider. Their website's easy to use and understand, and activation of my new plan was simple. To get started, go to mintmobile.com/lockedonnhl. There you'll see it right now. All 3-month plans are only $15 a month, including the unlimited plan. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with your existing contacts. Find out how easy it is to switch to Mint Mobile and get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/lockedonnhl. That's mintmobile.com/lockedonnhl. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/lockedonnhl. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabits on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. This episode is also brought to you by Omaha Steaks. Nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. This year, skip the holiday hustle and bustle and save 50% off gourmet gifts site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, get a $30 reward card when you shop early and score an extra $30 off with promo code NHL. With 5 generations of experience, they consistently deliver the world's best steak experience, and the gifting experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages starting at $89.99. From legendary steaks to mouthwatering desserts and more, save 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $30 off with promo code NHL and a $30 reward card when you shop early. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with promo code NHL. Minimum purchase may apply. All right, we are back. The Minnesota game is now in the rear view. We are headed home to face off against the Columbus Blue Jackets, a team that Montreal swept last year. They did not lose to Columbus, so it's a good opportunity for them, not only as a get-right game, but as we like to look at things here in the weekly forecast and recaps perspective, it's an opportunity for them to finish the week above 500. They won earlier this week against Buffalo. They did lose to Minnesota, but getting 2 points against Columbus at home is just what the doctor ordered as far as getting these guys. Hey, we haven't stretched a couple games in a row, but 2 out of 3, let's keep pressing on that, right? And then looking ahead to next week, they've only got 2 games. They've only had the Oilers, and then I can't remember who the weekend game is, but they're going to have tons of time off next week to practice and work on things. But right now, they have to focus on this game against Columbus. Like I said, the Blue Jackets are a bit of a weaker opponent. They're last in the Metropolitan. They're led by Kirill Marchenko. They already had to play against one high-scoring Kirill. They will have to face off against another one. Marchenko is a point per game. He's got 15 points in 15 games. And Sean Monahan returns to Montreal. I imagine he'll get a nice ovation. One of the coolest guys to play for Montreal over the last little while. And with everything that he's gone through with the passing of his friend Johnny Gaudreau, it's nice to see him find success in Columbus. That's a guy that I'm going to root for the rest of his career. He was a model Montreal Canadian. The fact that he came back after the season where he was injured, got the Canadiens 2 first round picks, which is incredible. If they win the cup, they're going to build a statue for him still. But yeah, Sean Monahan, lots of fun. I'm looking forward to seeing him come back into town, and I hope he has a good night. Although the Canadiens should still probably win this one. Special teams for Columbus, 19th on the power play, they're operating at 18%, and 13th on the penalty kill, 81.4. So for a team that's last in their division, it's sort of like Montreal. Like the special teams aren't terrible. They could be better, but they're not. I don't think it's the special teams that are killing them. It looks like it's 5-on-5 for the Blue Jackets. So there's a couple of things that I want to see in this game. The first is Shea Weber. We're going to see him come back to the Bell Center. They're going to celebrate his induction into the Hockey Hall of Fame. And because Shea Weber's there, it would be really, really nice to see if they can get the defense to score a goal or two. Right now, they have 3 goals from their defensemen all year. Caden Gooley, and the other 2 have not played for a while. The other 2 are Logan Mailloux, who I saw that goal. It was against the Islanders. And Justin Barron, who hasn't been playing. He's been scratched. I wonder if he sneaks back into the lineup, maybe at the expense of Jaden Struble or Arbor Xhekaj. We'll see what Marty ends up going with on Saturday night. But teams are giving the Montreal Canadiens a lot of point shots. You at least I've been noticing it. They're giving the defense a lot of time and space, and it's causing guys like Mike Matheson to sort of short circuit because when they have that time, they use it, and sometimes maybe they shouldn't. I would like to see the defense get a little bit more, jump a little bit up in the rush a little bit, try to score, or at least try to chip in offensively in some way, shape, or form. We're putting a lot of pressure on the forwards to play better defense. I think they need the defense to be to step up offensively as well. To have 3 goals from the D this year, it's just not, it's not something we're used to. We still haven't seen a Mike Matheson goal. We're still waiting for Lane Hudson to score. He was so close against Minnesota with one of the coolest moves we've seen so far this year. If that was his first NHL goal, man, that would be a really cool one. I feel like it's going to be a crummy one. I feel like he's going to wrist the puck in. It's going to hit a defender and go in. Because that's just how it goes for players like him. I'd also like to see a little bit more urgency on the power play. They're too methodical right now. The power play works best when they're moving their feet, when they're moving the puck quickly, when they're decisive. It seems like they take way too much time with the puck. I also think they have to try to get the puck into Juraj Slafkovsky's hands a little bit more. When he has the puck, his vision and playmaking takes over. And, maybe down at the goal line, it's the best opportunity for him to set up a goal, to put a puck on somebody's stick like Cole Caulfield that he can easily put in the net. But I kind of wonder if it's worthwhile to move him around a little bit and see if you can get him more involved. I don't know if that's something the Canadiens have even considered, but when puck is on Juraj Slafkovsky's stick on the power play, good things are typically happening. So I'd like to see more of that. And I want to see, more of the same intensity that we saw against the Wild, especially in that first period. I hope that the Canadiens on Friday in their film room session, or on Saturday in whatever film room session they might have, I hope they watch that first period together. Because I think if they play like that most nights, they will be fine. If they can play like that, even for 10-minute stretches at a time, they're going to put themselves in a much better position to win more hockey games. It's tough to do that every night in the NHL level, where these guys, especially in every team, is looking for that 60-minute effort. Montreal's much further away from it than a lot of teams. But we saw some stuff against Minnesota that we liked. I'd like to see them continue that. And I think the last thing I'm looking for is the top 6 to have another points night. And by that, I mean, fill the net against these guys. You can do that. This is a team where I said in the weekly forecast, where if you want to prove that you do not belong in the basement with these teams, these are the teams you need to beat. If you lose to Columbus, The plausible deniability is gone, right? We cannot say, well, they wouldn't be down here if X, Y, and Z. No, you need to beat Columbus if you want to prove that this is not who you are. And I think the Canadiens are still going through that, right? They're trying to prove that this, 5-10-2 start is not who they are. I don't think they're being very successful in that, but they're trying. And I guess that's all there really is. All right. We are going to head into our final segment. It is Friday, so that means it is our mailbag. And we have some questions about trading some defensemen, and we'll get into all that in just a minute. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, folks. Like I said, it is Friday, which means it is our mailbag, and you guys came through as you always do. So we'll start with two that are similar because I think we can spend a good amount of time talking about those two questions. One was a joke from my lovely co-host Laura at the Active Stick, who says, should the Habs trade Mike Matheson for a fourth-line plug who can punch faces? That's a no, but it's an interesting thought of trading Mike Matheson at this point in the season. He's got 1 year left on his contract after this. The Canadiens have one salary retention spot left. I think they would use it on a guy like Armia or Savard or Dvorak. But I wonder if as the season drags on and, maybe a guy like Engstrom can make the jump, not fill the shoes of Mike Matheson immediately, but I wonder how long it takes before the Canadiens start to get some calls on Mike Matheson. I think a playoff team would kill to have Mike Matheson on their team. I think that he's playing way too much in Montreal. He's playing over his head. Savard is playing over his head. If you can put Mike Matheson out there as a second pairing defenseman, you're laughing. Like, that's an incredible position for that player, especially if he's actually playing with a right shot defenseman and Mike Matheson can play the left. I'm not running Mike Matheson out of town, by the way. I love this player. I think that a lot of the hate that he gets is overblown. If you listen to the show, if you're one of our everydayers, you know that. Laura and I are big Mike Matheson defenders. The last few weeks have been difficult, to say the least, but we are big fans of what he brings to the Montreal Canadiens. So this is not in any way, shape, or form me running this guy out of town, but when push comes to shove, Kent Hughes has to do what's best for this hockey team. And if he gets a deal towards the trade deadline that blows his socks off, he has to take it. And similarly, we'll jump to another question here from Italian Habs Mike 25 on Blue Sky. With the Habs D struggling this season, are the Habs most likely to keep David Savard for the rest of the season, or will they try to trade him? This is an interesting one because Kent Hughes had said, I don't know if it was at the golf tournament, but it was at some point, early on in the season or in the preseason, where he said that they're not gonna be sellers at the trade deadline or something to that effect. I don't believe him. And the reason I don't believe him is I think he was saying that at a time where he thought this team would be in a better position than they are. They're not. This team will be a seller at the trade deadline, barring some 8-game win streak that we haven't seen in years. They're going to be sellers at the deadline. And that's fine. It's an okay position to be in. However, when you trade a guy like Savard, less so Armia, less so Dvorak, more so Matheson, if that's the move you end up going with, you cannot get draft picks in this upcoming draft. You can't. And the reason you can't is that does you no good. It just kind of gives you more currency. The Canadiens have a lot of currency already. What they need are guys who are ready to take the jump into the NHL. This isn't a great example because I don't love how this trade ended up, but stick with me here. Arturi Lehkonen into Colorado. They got a pick, but they also got a right-hand shot defenseman who was just about ready to make the jump to the NHL. So, I hope they would do better than Justin Barron in this case, but that's the sort of deal that if I was trading those guys that I would be looking for. I wouldn't be looking for, a first round pick in an upcoming draft. As nice as that would be, those players are 4 or 5 years away from making an impact on this team. And that's, the Canadiens are hoping to be competitive well before that. So it doesn't serve their needs to do that. With that said, I don't see a world at this point where David Savard is a Montreal Canadian post-trade deadline. He's going to be too valuable to teams who are making the playoffs. And I think the Canadiens need to start not making room for the young guys who are coming up, but it's time for a lot of them to put up or shut up. They're going to have to start playing. Justin Barron is running out of time. We've been saying that for a while. He needs to make an impact as a right shot defenseman on this team. Not that there's a ton of them coming up, but if the Canadiens don't have something in him, they need to pivot. It's the same thing with Logan Mailloux. If he doesn't hit, they will need to pivot. So that's why I'm saying that these guys have to start making strides in the right direction. Mailloux, we've seen the strides, no question. Barron, less so. So that's sort of the conversation that I would be having if I'm trying to trade a Savard or a Matheson. I'm trying to get guys who are ready to jump into the NHL soon. Mouse of the West asks, if Molson and Gorton are looking for end runs on the salary cap, but don't want to start a war with the other owners, is there room for something in the non-capped areas? Yes, there always is. Coaching is an area where they can do that. Skills coaching, bringing in a guy like Adam Nicholas is a perfect, thing the Canadiens can do. They can flex their financial might in other ways. All of the richer teams in the league do this. They hire a lot of skills coaches. They provide an experience for their players that's unrivaled. I remember when Gorton took over, he was saying that the Canadiens didn't have like meals on the road. They would just end up ordering takeout and their nutrition was terrible. That's changed since he took over. That Jeff Molson has made an investment in the way that these guys take care of themselves on a nightly basis. So it's important for the Canadiens to do these things, to spend that money elsewhere. There's only so much money they can spend on players. The league makes it that way. For what reason? At this point, it's unclear. But the Canadiens can flex their financial muscle in other ways. They are doing it. They could do more of it. They could bring in more shooting. I've got shooting on the mind because they shot the puck at the guy's chest all night. They need to bring Dr. Shot back in to help them. I don't know if he's going to want $8 million to do it, but it's probably worth it at this point. A couple more questions here. I will start with Kay here. Kay, who was on this week, a lovely guest and host of Game Over Montreal. A bit of a general / potentially heavier question. Was there ever a moment where you guys took a break, no matter how long or short, from watching hockey or the Canadiens? And yes, and I think it's a good segue into my Movember campaign. There was a time where I had a really difficult time with my mental health. It made, for those who haven't experienced depression, it makes it difficult to just enjoy the things you enjoy doing. You don't find joy out of your hobbies, out of spending time with your loved ones, and it stinks. It's difficult to pull yourself out of. It's why I really identify with the Movember campaign and their mental health awareness aspect of it. So that's why I'm wearing this terrible mustache, is because I've been there. It's not fun. And more people need to be aware of the signs of when you're feeling depression or anxiety. And these campaigns help bring, an awareness to that and provide a financial assistance as well. So thank you, Kay, for the question and for an opportunity for me to plug my Movember campaign. It's down in the description if you guys would like to help out. Last question, Bren Meadoff on Blue Sky. Who is your favorite obscure Habs player? And then he says, shout out to the GOAT, Daniel Carr. Daniel Carr is a great example. I love that one. Mine is Brett Lernout. WHL drafted kid, third round pick, played very little with the Montreal Canadiens, just a handful of games. And the reason he's my favorite is actually, there's a sign behind me that if you're on the YouTube feed, you see it. But I have a framed copy of Green Day's Dookie, and it's one of my favorite albums of all time. And Brett Lernout, I always heard his name as like the chorus of the song Burnout. I'm not growing up, I'm just Brett Lernout. And I always wanted him to make the team for that reason, because I thought that line was so fun, and he never made it. So unfortunate, but these things happen. All right, let's hit some trivia and then get out of here. Yesterday's question, name the player: Minnesota, Montreal, Edmonton, Colorado. I told you this was a sicko question, and it was. The answer is Sean Bell, 20 NHL games, just 2 of them with the Canadiens. I had a Sean Bell hockey card that I think had the Minnesota Wild on it, or he was wearing a Wild jersey, but it was a Canadiens card, and I was always so confused. So that's how I remember that. All right. Our question for today is in honor of Guillaume Latendresse, who I know is going through a tough time. He's stepping away for a little bit, so we're hoping for the best from Guillaume Latendresse, one of my favorite players as a kid growing up. Hope all is well, and hope we see you back on TV and social media soon. Guillaume Latendresse scored his first goal on November 7th, 2006 against the Oilers. Who had the assists? Who assisted on Guillaume Latendresse's first goal of his NHL career? Well, that's going to do it for us today, and it's going to do it for maybe it's Ian week. Thanks so much for tuning in all week and for putting up with me. And I'm very excited to have Laura back next week. I'm sure you will. And thanks for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, go find Locked On Fantasy Hockey, become a fantasy hockey expert, and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We are making the jump over to Blue Sky. We are Locked On Canadiens there. Laura is the active stick. I am Maybe It's Ian. We kept it simple. You know where to find us. We're also on TikTok at Locked On Canadiens. Subscribe, and I will try to get some previews out for episodes that go up the night after. All right. Enjoy the weekend, guys. Enjoy the game. We'll be back on Monday to break it down. Have a good one.